Jazz in Detroit is more than music. It's a living archive of resilience, rhythm, and roots. For generations, the city has been a magnet for jazz musicians. Now, Veronica Johnson is documenting stories of women who shaped Detroit's jazz scene and beyond, voices often left out of the spotlight. She is interviewing the musicians and sharing their stories. What sparked your interest in jazz?
Well, actually, my interest in jazz goes back to college. I just became just really, I guess, enamored with the music itself, the history of it, the culture, just how important this music is to the foundation of Black American music.
What inspired you to take a closer look at the women in jazz and to collect their oral histories?
I started doing all this research, and then I realized, wow, who's covering the current female Detroit musicians that are out here kind of carrying on this lineage. So that's kind of what really inspired me to want to dig deeper and tell their stories.
Those stories are part of the growing oral history collection in Detroit Sound Conservancy's digital archives.
It was at Cuyahoga Community College where I really started getting into jazz and playing jazz because they had a program there. But it wasn't until I moved to Detroit where I started really establishing myself.
So far, dozens of jazz musicians have participated in the project.
I basically interview everybody from Straight Ahead, the great female jazz group from Detroit, the great drummer Galen McKinney, Alina Moore, piano player. I've interviewed a lot of vocalists like Naima Shamberjay or Ursula Walker, Kate Patterson, Tazima Bey, great ragtime pianist. So that's just a few, but there's plenty of people I've interviewed so far.
So my father would make sure that I had a chance to hear music. He took me out to hear the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis Big Band. That was fantastic. We went to the Light Guard Armory on 8 Mile Road and heard them. He was really very, very good about making sure I had a chance to hear musicians when they came into town. And then little by little, as I started to do a little bit more playing, Wendell and Marcus would actually hire me for gigs when I was really quite young. And so those were my opportunities to really hone my craft and really fall in love with the music in a really big way.
You partnered with the Detroit Sound Conservancy on this oral history project. How did the collaboration come together?
So I've always been connected to the Detroit Sound Conservancy in some form or fashion. So when I started my oral history project several years ago, I did start off kind of going with Detroit Sound Conservancy. So now we're working to, archive and digitize these oral histories for the world to see.
The public will be able to listen to them at detroitsound.org.
What made you want to kind of stay in Detroit and kind of build roots as a musician versus going out?
I think it was the support that I got from the musicians in Detroit. The way that they surrounded me, especially when I had my son, they surrounded me, supported me, surrounded me with love. And when I had hard times, they were right there. They weren't snippy and gossiping and judging and doing all of that. They were just we love you, we support you, how can we help? And I was just amazed at that.
Partnering with Johnson on the oral histories is just one way the Detroit Sound Conservancy is helping preserve music history. Michelle Mama Jahra McKinney, Director of Collections, explains.
Well, we do it especially through placekeeping. So an example would be us rehabilitating the Bluebird Inn. We do it through actual archiving and preserving, which we are taking in the collections of musicians and people who create around the music. And we make them accessible and digitize them and whatever we have to do so that people from years later can come and see, wow, this is great. This happened in Detroit. This person did that. And we create educational resources and collaborations. So that's especially going to show up when we get into the Bluebird Inn.
Tell us a little bit about the Bluebird Inn.
Well, the Bluebird Inn is an iconic, historic jazz club. And it's just a little neighborhood bar. And that place became a haven because at that time, it was a lot of segregation in the city of Detroit. And there were places where Black folks could go and Black folks could not go. And it was a place where you could have Sunday brunch and you could see your neighbors and you could feel safe and you could be your Black self.
Unapologetically.
Unapologetic, yes.
Without fear.
Without fear.
For generations, Detroit has drawn artists from all over, some just passing through, but many staying for good. The city is also home to the world's largest free jazz festival, the Detroit Jazz Festival, drawing hundreds of thousands of attendees each year.
I like the jazz scene in Detroit. It's a Detroit thing, I think, where people just uplift each other, and whatever you need, they'll show you the way.
It's time for you to get up and show the world what we have in store.
How did women shape the jazz culture in Detroit?
They had a great impact on it. And that kind of stuff that you can hear that's toe tapping and you can sing along with it and remember the melody and be humming it to yourself. That was made more possible by women singing in jazz, to me. The storytelling.
All of me, why not take all of me? Can you see I'm no good without you?
When we think about that Detroit sound, what is it about the sound of Detroit that makes it so unique?
It still comes out of community. Actually, not even community, familyhood. That's what, to me, is what makes the communication and the mentorship and the passing things down that Detroit musicians do. It has extended worldwide. And so not only is it a sound, it's a feeling. It's a feeling of connectedness and of familyhood. And somehow that's embodied in the music. That Detroit sound that was in that really basic music that was there, created by the jazz musicians, the improvisation, the African rhythms that are embedded in it, all of that context is still going on and created that Detroit sound between the love that is in that music. It's pure love.
What made Detroit a destination for jazz? Or was jazz the destination for the people?
Detroit as a destination for musicians, it always has been because of the music that they brought as they migrated north. But at the same time, it's also about the connections. Like a Marcus Belgrave, he was just coming through Detroit with Ray Charles. And he said, "Oh, I love this city." Yeah, and people taking him under their wing and talking to him. And he left Detroit and he came back and he said, "I can't leave this place." He didn't want to leave.
What is it that you hope that people walk away with after hearing some of these stories?
Well, I just really want to, people to realize how, their work ethic, the resiliency of these women, again, a lot of the women I've interviewed, some of their 70s and 80s still performing. So it just goes to show how much they love music. And I just want people to realize that obviously women have as much of an influence and impact on Detroit jazz as the male counterparts. So I just want people to see the breadth and depth of these women and what they've done and what they've accomplished throughout their years.
Watch One Detroit, Thursday at 7:30 p.m. You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.